How string in a word?
No, we need to send them.
Oh, howdy. We are the group, the Animal Grazing group. I'm Fred Parker. We have.
I'm JD Tomlinson.
I'm Matthew Borders.
I'm Danny Hunt.
And I'm Michael Lapp.
So what we did was we created a Android game with a tablet integration within it. So when we were initially thinking of what we wanted to do for a project, I know many of us are gamers. These two are in our the TAG, the Texas Aggie Game Developers Society, I believe. So they like to create. We wanted to do something with that. We thought, look back at our childhood. We thought, when I was growing up, I have very fond memories of going to my friend's house and getting together and playing the N64, the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, just all these different consoles, playing split screen, having that face-to-face social interaction, that ribbing, that jiving at each other, and playing a video game. And then we looked at today and go, what do kids do today? They sit at home on their Xbox by themselves, yelling obscenities at someone they've never seen it before. And it's so much more fun to yell obscenities at your friend than someone you've never met. So we looked at that, we saw, well, why don't we have people playing video games together anymore in the same physical space? And we looked at, well, not everybody has a console. Consoles are expensive, but everybody these days seems to have a smartphone. Yet when people play on the smartphone, it's even more isolated, and they play, you might be playing Words with Friends or something like that, or you might be playing a fun run, but it's all by yourself. You off riding the bus, talking to no one, sitting at home on the toilet, as was shown earlier. But obviously, we saw this trend. Smartphone sales have just grown exponentially, while PCs, console sales have remained about the same. So we wanted to create something that brought that that multiplayer, face-to-face gaming experience together using mobile devices. So we thought of a sample scenario. You have 4 friends who are hanging out. You've gotten together to do something, and they try to figure out what they want to do. They've spent their time talking, and they're kind of tired of that, but they want to keep hanging out. So one of them has a tablet. Everybody seems to have a smartphone these days, so they can they have that, set it up, pull out the game, and they can start playing and really get to have an entertaining time with that.
Okay. Prior to working on this game, we did some research on other games that might have a similar situation. So mostly we focused on mobile multiplayer games. We found a few. One is called the Blue Game. It was a research project that was a face-to-face mobile multiplayer game based on Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, players would make characters that they would have on their own phone, and they would play with each other. This game was more turn-based. Ours more focuses on real-time play. Another one was Mobio Thread, another research project. This one focused on using tablets and using pervasive gameplay, which is basically location-based gameplay. So players are in usually a larger physical area. The research they did it on a university campus, so it doesn't involve face-to-face interaction, but it does involve real-time multiplayer play. And for games that are released, one that had been released recently is a game called Space Team. It's a face-to-face mobile multiplayer game done in real time where players get commands that they yell at their other teammates to complete in order to prevent their spaceship from crashing.
And our hypothesis is a combination of number of mobile devices, individual mobile devices, along with a central device, can create a game environment that is similar to traditional console game. And as Animal Game is just game design for enjoyment, so we do not force to many ethical concerns. But the only concern we see is possibility for user to become addicted to the game, causing negative impact in part of their life.
And so in designing animal games, we had to focus on certain things. The big overall design choice was to have a central device, most often a tablet, that all the users share, as well as each individual user having their own individual device. It could be a tablet, it could be a mobile phone that they would use to control their player, as well as get an individual so in designing the central device, we focused on having a top-down view of the maze. The mazes are randomly generated for each game. And the top-down view shows player location as well as item location. So these blue balls are the items, and it's easier to see during actual gameplay because of movement. You can see the characters running around. You can see where traps are played. And then you can also see players' health and score. Go ahead. And then also for the individual devices, we had to focus on both their personal view as well as the controls. So personal view, we took on a third-person perspective that's behind the player that allows them to see what's in front of them. Movement involves the character constantly running forward till it reaches a wall. So players use the buttons to turn left and right. Item pickup is basically just to run into an item, and then players can see which items they have. They can pull 2 at a time, and they basically tap the item to place it or use it. And they also can see their own individual health and score up there in the corner.
So in order to develop our game, we wanted to find a system that was simple to use and had a small learning curve. And so we found Unity. I previously used it on other projects, and it is a very powerful game engine that has a lot of tools built into it, such as real-time development, where you can modify objects and see the changes almost instantaneously. You can play the game inside the editor itself, and you can modify game objects using their inspector tool, and you can actually see those changes happen right away. And to develop our 3D models in the game, we used a tool called Blender, which has both 3D modeling and animation, and it's directly supported by Unity, so we can easily import models from Blender into our game very quickly and simply. So my individual tasks, I did AI development. We did 3 different levels of AI difficulty. We had easy, medium, and hard. And I did the pathfinding for each of the AI. They used the A-star shortest path algorithm to make their way through the maze. And I also did the maze generation, which consisted of randomly generated mazes using depth first search. And I also developed the user interface for both the smartphone and the tablet, which consisted of both designing it and implementing it.
I work on networking, like implement a network connection between tablet and phone.
I worked on actually the menu design, so later on when you actually see the menus, I was the one who created all the menus and also helped work on the graphics and a lot of the images and stuff that were used in the game.
I also worked with Danny and Matt, we integrating the networking within the game and to the game and the devices.
I worked with Blender doing the animation, both the general animations such as running and also individual character animations for the character selection screen. I also did the game design, came up with the concept and kind of had a general designing both the tablet and the smartphone. And so to test animal games, we did a user study, and we chose to do it with members of the Texas Aggie game developers, since they know about game design. And so we presented it to them, and we had them play it twice in groups. Once where the central device is seen there is fully visible, and a second time where the central device is covered, to see if the central device affected performance. Afterwards, we had them fill out a questionnaire that focused on a variety of topics such as demographics and their experience. We had 12 users, 10 male, 2 female, mostly computer science. These are some select questions we chose that showed different results. For control movement, users were not as happy with that. Most comments they wrote were saying that with turning corners, they would often turn too soon and wouldn't go forward. They would just stop. Using items was also not as positively seen. Mostly they noted that bombs were kind of sporadic. They weren't really sure when they would go off. Having the tablet covered had somewhat mixed results. Some users felt that it affected their performance, others felt that it didn't affect it that much. Most of the users seemed to enjoy the concept of the game and spoke highly of it in their comment section. And most of them had kind of a mixed enjoyment of the game, mostly relying on a mixture of enjoying the concept but not enjoying the character movement.
So if we had more,
If we actually have more time, we actually would like to test it on more casual individuals instead of maybe directly on the actual gaming section. We wanted to kind of see, maybe get direct input from people and see what they wanted to see in the game and see what we could actually add to it. We also wanted to work on more game types. I actually had implemented a list of all possible game types we could add in the game. We just hadn't got to that point yet. We wanted to have actual functional system, kind of get some feedback on it before we started throwing in Capture the Flag or, you know, King of the Hill or whatever, you know, different types of styles of games. But also, we also wanted more interaction to do with the tablet. So what makes people want to interact more with other people? Maybe if there's a button that appears for turbo or something that makes you run up here on the tablet, this keeps you from sitting back in your chair and getting away from that central location, and thus driving people to interact more with each other. And then also we wanted to eventually be able to release it to the market, thus so people can download it and have it easily accessible on their mobile device. Throughout the IAP presentations, the SRW, and the engineering showcase, we received a lot of positive feedback about how the concept of design seems to be like a good place to head. They're actually really intrigued on what that could lead to, and also with the SRW, we also received second place on oral presentation on mathematics. So good. Things are still in development. Obviously, like I said, we're still throwing more objective type games in there, other styles, working on the animations, maybe more objects for things to be used. Maybe you actually work on improving graphics or animation between the things, obviously the turning in the game. But as far as everything goes, we still have a functional game. We just want to improve it. But overall, like I said, we were able to demonstrate the traditional consoles set up on mobile devices, and we would like to continue development, and we think that it could inspire other games that are out there to go towards that style of gaming.
so future work, we wanted to create more items for users to use to enhance their gameplay. One thing we thought of was a temporary invisibility, so the players couldn't see them for 5 seconds or so. And then also add more interaction to the game to provide a more unique experience. And also try to integrate the central device more with the mobile devices, the smartphones. And then also develop more game types just to make the game more diverse and provide a more unique experience. And to do more user testing so that we could make sure that our game is of high quality and people actually like the game. And also to release our game to more marketplaces. Oh, so in closing, our project was pretty successful, I think. We accomplished pretty much all of our goals. We used a Gantt chart in the beginning to sort of set out what we wanted to accomplish for our game, and we were able to develop a pretty interactive system. And so in the future, we want to do more user testing and eventually release it to the market.
And now we're going to show a trailer video we have made for Animal Games. And we're going to go ahead and take questions now, but while we're doing that, we're also going to do a live demo of it as well.
Before we have questions, quick overview. As you can see, we have a tablet and 2 phones. the tablet generally you can easily host the game, and then each phone can join in. You see the list. My phone will work and connect. Choose your character, which there are those different ones as it was shown. And finally, once everybody's in, you can start the game. It'll spawn both players in, and then they can start playing, running around the maze. So, any questions?
Can you talk to the network architecture a little bit more? How did you guys solve for how all the devices interact and what keeps track?
We used Unity. The Unity game engine has a lot of built-in networking features. It has network managers and things like that. Initially, we really wanted to try and have it where this could be played by itself, and the fact that you don't need a wireless network to play over. But recently, Android started supporting, in Android 4.0, so they started supporting the ad hoc network a little bit. I looked into that for far too long, trying to figure that out, and it's real buggy, real hit and miss. And the fact that the Android 4.0 devices we had, the tablet I got from the school is 4.0, but I couldn't get that to work. I could get it to work on Matt's phone, but not JD's. So we had a lot of problems with that, so we ended up going with what Unity has built in, where it works over the network, as opposed to that ad hoc style.
So ad hoc meaning moving from like a 4G.
Basically, the
As
tablet would host,
Yeah.
which would act like a central access point, and thus they can connect to it, and thus network with each other anywhere.
Wi-Fi, it still works then, or?
It's built to use Wi-Fi from the start, but I believe Unity also supports any type of connection, so in the future we could support that.
This is probably my lack of understanding.
How did you approach the difference between your server version and your client version? You know, your host application versus your phone devices.
So whenever the game starts, the server spawns all of the players. It tells them to spawn their own character, and then the server knows that it's the server, and it just simply leaves the camera above the maze throughout the whole game. And then anytime a player performs a certain action or attacks another player, then they send a message to the server, and the server knows how to handle that. And so on. And it sends back feedback to the user.
But also, you don't necessarily have to have a tablet. Obviously, the bigger screen helps out. But a phone could serve as a server. In the main menu screen, you have an option to host or join. And thus, when you do the host, it allows you to set up that server to be connected to it. And thus, if you hit join, it'll look for any existing hosts, and thus allow you to connect to that. So you could technically, well, I don't have my phone, I don't have my tablet with me, and you can still play. But of course, the maze, the bird's eye view would be a lot smaller, but it would work for anything.
So, did you think of the idea that maybe two people just have each have a phone, and so there wouldn't necessarily be that third device to where you would allow someone to host and play at the same time?
Yeah, I would say so. The big thing with our user studies, we found some people were able to play without. The reason we decided to go ahead and do it where you still needed a hosting device is kind of to emphasize the use of the central screen. Certainly, we could consider in future work making a version that does not require a separate device that one would not play on, but instead would be shared.
The one reason we kind of kept it this way was because that would kind of not force them to interact with each other up close. And that's why it gets away from the main purpose of the benefit to society.
Also, we'd like to implement having the tablet be used more, like where as we mentioned, like having things that the user has to do on the tablet or use it in some way to force more interaction that way.
Any gotchas, anything you do differently?
The big thing was we kind of got delayed on the network because of licenses. We needed an Android license for Unity, and there were issues that we ran into with that.
Also, knowing what I know now about how buggy things are, I could not waste my time looking into as many things.
So how did you try to troubleshoot those?
I have a buddy who's an Android developer, so I talked to him a lot, and he had never really worked with it, but he helped point me in a few directions I looked into doing some jumps where you ignore the settings of the. It's essentially kind of jailbreaking, but I didn't want to go with that. Things that, in the idea of if it was actually released, you wouldn't really want an app messing with someone's device like that because of privacy issues and things like that.
Cool. If we have no more questions, let's give them 1 o'clock.